So are you enjoying FOSDEM so far?
Well, tell us about Wikimedia.
Okay, I can do that because so this we have not yet started. We're just making time for everybody to arrive. So I work for the Wikimedia Foundation. Um, I don't know if everybody's familiar with it. Do you know what I'm talking about if I say Wikimedia? People usually recognize better the brand Wikipedia. So we at the foundation are a non-profit organization. We are funded just by very generous donors, and our mission is to support all the open knowledge projects that are maintained by the community. So we are just the foundation to support them. We don't own Wikipedia. We don't have a decision on what's being edited or not. What we try to do is to support financially in terms of software development, so MediaWiki mostly, and other software related to run the wikis. And in particular, our team is in charge of maintaining the servers to receive a huge amount of traffic that we have to be able to serve not only Wikipedia. Wikipedia is the most famous project, but there are a lot of other projects not as well known. I don't know if you're familiar with Wikimedia Commons. It's a repository of files, mostly images, sounds, and video, but also other files. I've actually just uploaded the slides to Wikimedia Commons.
Now we know how you're going to spend the next 5 minutes.
Yes. I configure this to... Okay, it worked. I had this very good idea of disabling the touchpad when a mouse is on, and it doesn't work that well. And now there's another project, and I will start soon. There's another very successful project, which I personally was quite surprised, which is Wikidata. Are you familiar with it? Which is not just having text and images on wiki pages, but actually have a repository of a free database, a database of everything. So it's structured data that can be queried by anyone. So if you're interested in knowing more, please visit, there's a wikimedia.org and the wikimediafoundation.org websites, and you can check all our projects. And of course, I will encourage you to edit Wikipedia. Let me ask, who makes some content or edits or has ever edited on Wikipedia or any? Okay, the rest, what are you waiting for? We need your contributions. Please, please, it takes just a mobile phone to edit something, and with things like Wikidata, a photograph, an image, it takes very little to contribute. The other thing, just before we properly start, is we are hiring on the site reliability engineering team. So if someone wants to work with us even after everything I will tell you, please contact me, or you can go to this website.
You can say what the hashtags do. First time it happened, but yesterday we did jokes. Yeah, but Jim's jokes are very bad.
Yeah, you can trust him on that.
Yeah, it's okay.
What's this joke? MySQL enters in a bar and goes to a table and says, "Can I join you?" As you can see, I'm horrible at telling jokes. I shouldn't even try.
You can start.
Okay, let's go. So I did the long introduction before. I will present myself properly. I'm Jaime Crespo. I work as a DBA, database administrator in the technology team for the Wikimedia Foundation. And I'm going to talk about TLS. TLS, I will be talking, sometimes I will mention TLS, sometimes I will be saying SSL. In all cases, I will really mean TLS, but because MySQL and MariaDB is still referring on configuration and many other projects as SSL, sometimes I will say SSL. And one of the myths I have been found around TLS is that it is hard and it doesn't work because I have a lot of load, so I cannot enable it. So I need to run in a less secure environment. For the first thing, which is TLS is hard, I had to say no, it is not. This is an actual commit of our public Puppet repository. We use Puppet for configuration management, and this is a commit that I personally did, I think, a couple of years ago. And literally, this is everything that it is to enable TLS. It's literally 3 lines of code. This is on the client, this is on the server. This is the actual production configuration that we use for MediaWiki. And yeah, well, I added some flags so we can enable and disable at will. But that's it. So that's how you enable TLS. I'm done. Thank you very much. That's all. The thing is, the rest of the talk, I won't be telling you about TLS. I actually don't know that much. I'm not a security expert. I'm not a traffic expert. We have people that knows too much about, knows enough about cryptography, about security. What I'm going to talk to you is about all the operational pains as a DBA to enable this on a relatively large scale. So I will focus now on the large scale part. I'm not actually sure if we are that large. And let me ask you, for example, how many of you on your own are responsible for handling at least one MySQL, MariaDB, or Percona server? Okay, keep your hand up if you have more than 10. If you handle on your own more than 100? More than 1,000? Okay, we can see that those people are the ones that are really large scale. The thing I decided to call ourselves large scale is because if I show you things like this, I may not be able to. Is that one of the great things of being able to work on the Wikimedia Foundation is that I can actually show you this. This is my MWiki installation on over 2 data centers, and we have a few of these, and I can keep scrolling. If you ask some of those people that have thousands, and I know they're much larger than us, they probably can't show you this. I can show you in real time. This is actually real time of how many queries, how many servers do I have. So my actual what I want to show you is how I failed to actually enable TLS. It's actually an ongoing project because I can speak openly about everything that I did and I failed. So maybe you don't have to commit the same mistakes that I did. And this is basically a summary of everything that we have on our tracking system, which is open for everyone to see. The best or the biggest failure probably was that we rushed to production. When I was working, I was at the time the only DBA. I was in charge of maintaining all those databases, putting out fires. There was very little automation. I will talk about that later. But we were going to do a data center failover for the first time. We needed encryption on the replication channels, on the MySQL replication channels. So what did I do? I did that commit I showed you before. I enabled TLS, and I said, well, I mean, this is just for a test, so I will just create a test certificate. What happens with test configuration and test deployments? That test things become permanent. But I was wise. I knew I had to force myself to not something that is temporary to be permanent. So what did I do? I generate a temporary certificate for just 1 year. In 1 year, it will expire. Do you know where I'm going to? Do you know who was restarting servers in a rush because the TLS was about to expire? Yes, that person. So that's a lesson. TLS is not difficult to do it, but probably it was my fault to not push back and say, hey, if we need this to be done with a specific schedule, maybe we can do other kind of encryption that is easier to switch and to manage. An SSH tunnel, VPN encryption, anything that we can like change quickly, and later we will do what I had to do, which is in this case work 3 times as much. First to enable things, do a full fleet restart, then undo the things, and then redo the things properly. The other problem was resources, and happily after that I got at least some help to manage that. I'm not longer on my own. The other problem we face is orchestration. That's something that, again, at the time we didn't have the proper resources. So we weren't able to do very quick full fleet restarts. And that's something that I think is one of the other big problems with MySQL. And I will talk later about things I would like to change on MySQL to make things easier. And is that every time that you have to enable for the first time encryption, or you have to change the certificates, which was the case on this second rollover, change the certificates to, in this case, we started using the same Puppet certificates that we were using for our configuration management. We reuse them for MySQL too. But every time there was an OpenSSL bug, you were supposed to also restart MySQL, in this case not because of a change of a certificate, but also because, well, you have to upgrade OpenSSL. Upgrading OpenSSL is quite easy, but MySQL has to get the new cert library. And for that, you need to do a restart. And there was a problem in terms of server and client coordination, because at that time we enabled only encryption just for replication. But if we wanted to change the CA, it was always an internal CA, the cross-DC replication from data center 1 to data center 2, it was not easy to coordinate that, because if you change it here, now replication is broken. So of course you could just disable replication, but at that point, the point was, no, once we have enabled encrypted replication, we cannot go back to plain text. So we had to do complex topology changes to be able to replicate from from a replica that had a different CA, do failovers, blah, blah, blah. Most of this would have been much easier if we had the tools that we have right now in terms of orchestration to handle this easy. You want to know more about orchestration? There is a talk on the configuration management track by Ricardo and I recommend you to go there and check what some open source tools we have developed. I already mentioned this, server support. We hit bugs with encryption not working, literally. Some older versions weren't compatible with the newest standards of TLS. I don't know exactly what was the issue, but the version that we were at the time, a couple of years ago, we were still on 5.5, didn't absolutely work for the kind of encryption that we want. Okay, we just upgrade. The other issue that we face is that only OpenSSL linked packages of MySQL works with modern versions of TLS. I'm talking 1.2 and in the future 1.3, which means at that time both the upstream packages and the ones that were provided by our distribution, either Ubuntu or Debian, they didn't work. In fact, Debian considers OpenSSL license, the old one or the current one, and not compatible with GPL. So it's not a bug, and it's not a question of this doesn't work. No, they, at least for what I'm told, they don't plan to link it because of some technicality on the license, which I'm not against, but we definitely need strong encryption here if we're going to do it. So that was not the only reason. We also wanted to have custom applied patches, security, backports, and other stuff. But one of the things we had to do is to create our own packaging of MySQL. Well, in this case, MariaDB. We're currently using MariaDB 10.0, and we're migrating to MariaDB 10.1. More pain. Client support, third-party support. Some of the developers may also be here. We had problems with PHP 5.5 that wasn't fully compatible with OpenSSL 1.2. And this is probably in general the biggest pain. Most client libraries, connectors, etc., have some kind of support for TLS, but not 1.2. And the problem is TLS 1.0 and 1.1 has protocols that are vulnerable to security problems, to security exploits. So we definitely wanted to go for the secure protocol. For the one that at this time doesn't have no bugs, at least the depending on the encryption algorithm. The other thing is we have been starting playing with things like proxy SQL, and that's something that René, I have been sending him bugs, and the problem with proxy SQL, for example, which is not a client or a connector, is that because it was using an older client, the client that proxy SQL integrated didn't support 1.2. And that's kind of a blocker, as you can see, for us. And then, as something that is a bit curious, people were starting to see that they write colleagues MySQL, and that stopped working, and it says something like TLS error or something like that. Why was that? Well, one of the biggest problems that I have to work to make me understand is that handling TLS for MySQL is a complete different problem to handle or enabling TLS for something like Apache. Apache has the concept of virtual hosts. The way you use Apache is normally with a public certificate that is validated by the external CA. In our case, we handle the whole stack with our own internal CA. And typically you connect through an IP address, but the certificates are based on a domain. So if you go through localhost, for example, through a socket, and we have enabled validate the domain, you cannot connect because the domain and localhost doesn't match. So that's a silly thing, but something to have into account when enabling this. There were some things that went well, I have to say. One of the things that I think we did well is when we rolled it into production, we did opt-in, which means that we enable the support, but every single client can be slowly enabled on the use of TLS. For example, we started with the replication channel because it's really easy. If you want to use encryption, starting to enable TLS through the replication channel, it has almost no performance impact. I will tell you later why, but it's mostly related that it's a single connection that is ongoing all the time. There's no a lot of connects and disconnects. And the impact on performance is almost, at least in our case, null, no performance impact there. The second step is enabling for administration channels or things that are not pure client heavy hitters, things like administration, things like schema changes, things like things that don't really need the performance. It doesn't matter if connecting takes 1 second, when the connection takes 1 second, because you can wait. Also going from through TLS 2.2, because if we had enabled it with the non-OpenSSL, JSSL, or one of these products that doesn't provide you full compatibility, we will be doing again even more work to now enable TLS .2 or in the future .3. And well, support in terms of we are in a place that people are really concerned about privacy and security. So having the support from management on, yes, spend time on this because this is important. It's something that you really want to have. You don't want to say, hey, don't waste time on that security stuff because it takes a toll on you. We are not aiming for 100% coverage right now. When I created this proposal, I was hoping that we will already have the 100% coverage, but it will eventually come. In most cases, in our case, it is due to application changes that are needed, and we are now going to migrate from HHVM to PHP 7, so there's a lot of work that gets there. And, there's only 2 DBAs, so we work on this on our free time, let's say. This is a couple of things I wanted to show you for the idea of I'm worried about how much of a performance hit this will have on us. And I think you can trust me that we have quite some performance. If I have time, I will show you our real-time monitoring that is public of how many queries, how many reads we have. This is some tests that we did on idle host, so it's not fully representative of an actual full load. But forget about so many numbers, and I want to remark that the difference between SSL or TLS connections is what can be problematic. We are talking about 20 times to 50 times slower of the time for connecting. But in terms of actual query performance, the impact is less than 5%. So what does this tell us? Just fix the client library so they use persistent connection, and that's the whole point of our interest on proxy SQL. So we can have proper, there's some kind of pre-using of connections at application level right now, but we need full pre-creation of connections, so that overhead is already forgotten by the time you need a query ready. So you could do the same thing. In our case, changing the architecture takes a bit of time, enable things like proxy SQL. We are not in a rush because we wanted this for mostly cross-DC queries, which right now we don't do, but we may be eventually doing. But we may fix that in a different way, in which you only have, we may only need to do same DC queries, which is what we wanted to do. As the last thing is, okay, how could you ease my pain, the rest of you? There's literally, and probably more, 3 bugs. The last one is mine. The first one, I think, is by Simon. Is Simon here? And the second one is by Eric. And these are bugs all related to please allow us to change certificates in a hallway. So if there's any people from MySQL over there, please have a look at those bugs, maybe like mark-as duplicates. From the people that are not part of MySQL, but are part of the MySQL community, support of proper TLS would be great. Rene is going, for example, in the case of proxy SQL, super helpful in that case. And proper OpenSSL 1.1 support, which I think it's available in both MySQL and MariaDB on the latest versions, but we cannot all be on the latest MySQL or MariaDB versions, so it would be helpful to kind of support older versions of MySQL or MariaDB. Well, if you have metrics, you have tests, please share them. That's exactly what I'm doing here. I already talked about pending work, but that's it. Basically finishing the migration. One thing I didn't mention is TLS is not only for security from the point of view of someone is in the middle trying to get queries that are going or private data. The other thing is enabling more secure authentication methods, which until 8.0 it was only possible if you were using TLS on the connection. So that's it. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, we may have 1 minute for that, a couple of minutes. Yes.
Hi. You mentioned that you introduced orchestration tools.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that you want to use them.
So there's several components because so I will repeat the question. I just want to show our real-time monitoring here. This is our load of most of our database. So the question is, what do we use for orchestration? So it's a combination of things. Depending on what you call orchestration, one of the things that has been introduced recently is a custom-made tool, which was called Cumin, which basically is a proper replacement for Salt, which was what was used for executing remote commands in a parallel way. And this is a much better replacement. If you want to know about that, that's the talk I mentioned. In terms of MySQL orchestration, we are kind of trying to build a custom library because things like orchestrator, it doesn't fit very well our own use cases. In terms of pooling and depulling servers, in the past that was not a tool, that was not something we wanted. We had to go through the database code commits, which was horrible. The current work right now is to have some kind of dynamic configuration object server, and probably it's going to be something like etcd, so we can change much more dynamically the weights and the pool servers. Once we have etcd and with the help of Cumin, it will be some things, but that are left, like automatic master-slave switch, but that I think will be much easier once the other things are fully on place. I don't know if that answers your question. So a lot of different things, and not something like commercial in terms of something that already exists. More questions?
You have time while I set you up. You can answer the question.
No other? Yes? Any? Sorry? Yes. So our full stack is MariaDB, PHP, MariaDB, Varnish. Well, there's a lot of technology there. As a rule, we just use open source or free software around the whole. So we don't let anything to be installed on our servers if it's not open source. I think there are some exceptions, like people in the office may use Windows or something like that, but in terms of servers, yes, it's fully open source.
Last question from Mark.
Yes. Yes. Mhm. Yeah. So the problems, the idea is, well, have a double certificate so you can migrate easily. Yes, and definitely, to be fair, right now that's not a huge problem, because the problem was migrating from the bad testing stuff to the proper stuff. And definitely there's ways to solve that. I may not be using double certificate because it doesn't actually solve the possible compromise of the CA authority. So you still have to have a way to kind of restart the server to introduce like a new non-existing CA. And in terms of, for example, replication, is actually much easier than I said, because the certificates and the configuration for replication is purely dynamic already, so it's not really a huge concern. It was just at the time. Show me, like, let's talk outside, because it's a much larger question.
Thank you very much.